Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Long Game Podcast with myself, Ben Scallon, and Jason Osborne, who consistently dresses better than me every single time we do these. I find that I always end up wearing some kind of t-shirt, or you always have to wear a collar or one-up me. And I feel like if I was to start dressing like you would go to like a tuxedo or something just to
Well, I
make
have the
sure I'm
advantage of
outclassed
obviously,
at every opportunity.
I have the advantage of having a spy camera in your bedroom, obviously. So I see what you're putting on beforehand, whereas you don't have that advantage with me. So don't be
Or
too
so
hard
you
on
think.
yourself. Yeah, exactly.
It's like
So I was here and
A
excited.
Cold War arms race. So I suppose for the week that's in it, we're going to be discussing a variety of topics. We're going to talk about Taoiseach Simon Harris's claim that the erosion of respect for authority and the value of human life is part of what led to the M9 crash and the fatalities that were involved there. And so he's very concerned about what that says about our culture, that people are losing respect for human life. And of course, my irony meter has shattered, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. We're also going to be talking about the government's plans to strengthen the naturalized citizenship requirements, which is something that we've talked about previously and is very welcome. We're going to be talking about the GTA 6 leaks, and obviously, this is important even for the boomers among us who aren't interested in video games, given that this is the biggest piece of media possibly ever produced. And so you've got
It's
billions of
incredible.
dollars on the line. So that'll be very interesting. And we're going to be talking about the massive fall in Catholic baptisms. I mean, I presume Christian baptisms are down in general, but obviously Catholicism is the
Mm.
biggest denomination in the country. So that's particularly culturally significant. And that probably ties to some of the other topics that we'll be discussing. So, for starters, Jason, what do we want to kick off with? What's our most topical of subjects?
Well, why don't you tell me about what Simon Harris had to say about the devaluing of human life in Ireland? Because I'm very much inclined to agree with him, but as you said, my upon reading those comments, my irony meter shattered as well. So tell me a little bit more about that, so we can discuss it.
So we were at a press conference yesterday morning, and Taoiseach Simon Harris was asked about the M9 crash, in which obviously the five occupants of a car were killed driving the wrong way up the road, up the motorway, and the other family, by the way, the women in that car and possibly the child as well. And as of the latest news, there, I'm sure you saw they are facing potentially life-changing injuries. So we don't know what that means
Mm.
exactly, but that's obviously horrifying to think that that could happen to you as a result of hoodlums acting like reckless lunatics. So he was asked about this, and he went off on the social media companies. He said that they are allowing this kind of copycat crime to be glorified, and people are doing it for social media attention and clout and likes. And I am personally quite sick of the everything is social media's fault. Like, I think it's a great get out of jail free card for politicians. That the issue is not really that people are posting degenerate stuff online; it's that they're doing degenerate things. Obviously, you could say that maybe social media has a role in that's where people are congregating, but I don't think that's
Mm-hmm.
really the issue. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. He said ultimately the real issue here is people are losing any respect at a societal level for authority and for human life, either their own life or the lives of other people. And he didn't use the word nihilism, but that's effectively what he described, which kind of ties back to the Europol report that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, where people are engaging in this sort of nihilistic, non-ideological, self-destructive behavior. And he was saying this is a really serious societal issue, and that everyone has a role to play in discussing what we're going to do about it, because he said he doesn't think there's a readily made solution there. And
Mm-hmm.
I agree with him. I think he's absolutely right. I think there's a lot of nihilists out there who are not grounded to anything. They don't care about other people. They have no empathy. They have no regard for the well being of other people or themselves. I just wonder what role politicians, including himself and others, have played in manufacturing that kind of a society. And I'm sure you have
Yeah.
very feelings. So why don't you take it away and let it rip?
Yeah, I mean, like you, when I read his comments initially, as I say, I 100% agree with him. I do think that it's a much bigger problem than this or that particular policy. I think it is a general erosion in respect for authority, and even more fundamentally in respect for human life. And I do think that the government and Simon Harris's party, Fine Gael, and Micheál Martin's party, Fianna Fáil, have a lot to answer for in this regard, but I also don't think it can be laid entirely at the feet of politics, because I think it's something that takes place ultimately at the level of the individual. Um, not to exonerate them here, and we're going to get plenty here into what they have done in terms of eroding this, but it is to say that I think that when you're dealing with things like this, it goes higher than the level of the political. You're really getting into the realm of morality, and you're getting into the realm of um, sort of fundamentals, nearly. And I think that what we've seen has been the complete neglect of those things in Ireland. Not Ireland isn't unique in this regard, but certainly in Ireland, and that's what we're most concerned about here for decades now. And yeah, okay, to get on to the government, I do think that the government, and as I say, the alternating ruling parties of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have had a huge hand to play in bringing about the conditions so that has happened. You see it everywhere. I mean, the most primary one, the absolute screaming irony here, this talking about respect for human life, is it was his party that introduced abortion. He was the Minister for Health, if I remember correctly, during the campaign to repeal the eighth, which brought abortion into Ireland, which, whether people like it or not, struck a obviously struck the fundamental blow against the right to life in Ireland. Um, and I will linger on this a little bit, because it is one that we often get pushback on in our comments, because even amongst Gript readers there'd be difference of opinion on this one. But it's hard to know how many abortions have taken place across across the world, but certainly across the Western world over the past couple of decades. It's not out of the ballpark to say it's been about 3 billion or so. Like, it's you're not talking millions. You're genuinely in the territory of talking about billions here of abortions having taken place. Um, I know you'd agree with me here. I think that the unborn child is irrefutably human. They're at an earlier stage of development, sure, and at the earliest stages, so like in Ireland, where it's up to 12 weeks generally, um, you can't really see that development from the outside, but just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's any less the case. And so
If
this,
anyone denies that, if anybody is currently saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous. That's a fundamentalist interpretation. That's totally hyperbolic or exaggerated," stop this video, pause this podcast, go straight to Google or any biology textbook of your choosing. You pick and look up the part on human life, go to Google right now and type in "when does human life begin," and every single medical resource will tell you it begins at conception. That's what John Hopkins University will say. That's what Oxford will tell you. Anything you pick, and it will tell you that quite confidently, because that is what the science says. That is not the opinion of Jason Osborne or of Ben Scallon
mm,
or of anybody else. That is the fact of the matter. So, yeah,
and
anybody
like
who tries to deny that
all
is fundamentally at odds with science.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent here, because obviously we're discussing something in particular, but I will say, that being the case, that it is a reasonable estimate that anywhere from 2 to 3 billion abortions. It's hard to say exactly have taken place in recent decades. How could that not have an effect? It's like, okay, a lot of people will disagree with us and say, those aren't those They'll say those aren't humans, which is just wrong. But nevertheless, that's what they'll say. And so if the people who are getting the abortions don't think that, and who are enabling it don't think that they're humans, it's like, well, how can it be having an effect on them? And it's like, well, that would be because you and I would say we have the truth on our side here. It's like these are humans. They're the most vulnerable humans who quite literally can't advocate for themselves. And the idea that the absolute mass industrial scale slaughter would have been taking place over decades of them, the idea that it won't have some kind of effect is pure fantasy. Like, even if it's, because I think looking at the situation, you would say, okay, well, it ostensibly has an impact on the birth rate very clearly. Like, if these abortions hadn't taken place, if the number of abortions is as high as I'm speculating here, which, as I said, is a very good reason to think so, there'd be a lot more people around. So that's very clear, first of all. It's obviously affected the people who have availed of it, who've carried it out on some level. But it's like, even beyond those, the idea that it hasn't had some sort of psychical or unconscious effect even on us is farcical. Like, you don't do anything in this life repeatedly, whether on an individual or a societal level, over years and years and decades, and not have it have an impact on you. And so I think that the way that ties into what Simon Harris said is that we've lost fundamental respect for human life, and it's like, yeah, absolutely. And you guys signed off on one of the biggest blows against it in Ireland's history. So it's go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and they're looking at obviously assisted suicide and euthanasia and things like that,
Yeah.
and that hasn't happened. But that's and the fact that that's even under consideration. That one is a lot more thorny because that one they can't deny that you're dealing with a human life issue, even if they wanted to cope on the other one and say, oh well, that's not it. And I heard an argument, not to go on too much of a tangent or get sucked into the bioethics.
No other media outlet is going to talk about these things, so I think we can take our time.
Yeah. Maybe we're the ones who should actually discuss this in more detail, because I heard an argument recently which at first was compelling to me, and then having thought about it a bit more, I realized no, I don't actually agree with it at all. Where it was said that the reason we're seeing such a massive demographic collapse now, and the birth rate is falling off a cliff basically everywhere all over the world, is because this is the first time in human history where having kids was optional. Because prior to this, there was no such thing really as widespread contraception. There was no such thing as abortion really in its modern incarnation. And so people throughout history, if they want to be intimate, which obviously all human beings do, unless there's something seriously medically wrong with them, then you're going to have kids as a result of that. And it was just a fact of life, in the same way that,
Yeah.
like, if you drink a bunch of water, you're going to have to urinate. And, that's just the byproduct. Not to compare babies to that, obviously. That's
I know
gross.
what you
You
mean.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just an extension of the human biological experience. So I heard this argument, and now it's an unprecedented thing that we can now actually just choose to not have kids, and people are doing it by the tens and hundreds of millions. So I thought, yeah, that's a pretty good point. And then I realized, actually, no, it's not, because you could always have abortions. That's never been a thing that was not possible. Like, even going back to the Didache, which you'll know and many of our viewers will know, was like this ancient apostolic Christian kind of early catechism from the first or second century, where it's basically giving a list of things that Christians are allowed to do and not do. This has a description of, it doesn't use the word abortion, but it basically says that you're not allowed to drink potions that or like chemical cocktails that cause you to miscarry. And the only reason that would be a rule is if that was things that people were doing back then. So this obviously was a
Yeah.
thing that existed. So the point is, these sorts of options have always been available to people going back thousands of years. People are familiar with the concept of, if you don't take care of your baby while you're pregnant, your baby can die, and you could actually cause that to happen if you wanted to do it. And so the fact that this wasn't done on a mass scale is not because people weren't able to. Um, it would just never occur to people in the vast majority of cases. Like a Viking would sink an axe into your forehead and rob your stuff quite comfortably. But if you said to him, "Hey, would you kill your own child in the womb?" he would look at you like you were insane. Like, we are literally sub-barbarian. Our behavior would be incomprehensible to a Gallic tribe who ate people. They would think that it was irrational and insane to kill your own children.
Well,
So
I tell you, I've been deeply disturbed over the past couple of weeks, but we're not going to get into it now because it's not directly relevant. But the Lindsay Clancy trial, you've probably seen it going on in the periphery over in the US, and I think there are a lot of intricacies to the case itself that I'm not going to bother getting into now. But I think that what you can comment on fairly bluntly in black and white is the sort of cult that has grown up around the woman herself, because there's nothing nuanced about that. And it's these people who are essentially, from what I'm seeing on social media, again, downplaying the humanity of children. Like, it's all about, you know, me, me. It's all about how tough children are, how tough babies are, and how ultimately, in light of that reality, you can fully understand how someone would kill them and things like that. And as a father, you're a father as well. We know how tough, and we're, thanks be to God, blessed with good wives. We all know how tough children are and can be, and how they can bring you to the end of your tether. But it would never. Again, I'm not speaking even about the trial itself here, but about the way some people and sort of women in particular are talking about it in a way such that like it would nearly be justified to kill your child, or that you should ought to be able to be sort of exonerated because it's so difficult. And it's like, you don't get to a place like this as a society unless you've become quite comfortable with the concept of children as optional, the concept of children, particularly newborns and unborn babies, as sort of at your whim. And the times we're living in at the moment, just a final comment on this, we really live in a sort of a war of worldviews, is what we're caught up in at the moment. And it goes down to a very axiomatic level. It's like you either believe in the dignity of the human person or you don't. You either believe in the inviolability of the human person or you don't. And all of the sort of gradations people try to introduce into the discussion are a whole load of cope around that dichotomy, that people don't want to come down on. Well, they do want to come down on one side of the fence. They're ultimately coming down on the side of the fence that says, oh, I do believe in all of that, but sometimes life is so hard and you have to be able to sort of essentially do away with people then because it's so difficult, whether it be because, oh, life is too hard now, so I just can't have this child, and so abortion, or, this person is suffering so much, and so we ought to be able to euthanize them and not have to care for them. And it's like, well, okay, but be honest then. It's like, there are exceptions then when it's okay to kill someone. And if you're comfortable saying that, it's like, well, why can't you expand the grounds upon which it's acceptable to kill someone? The only way in which it's absolutely prohibited is to say that human life isn't yours to give or isn't yours to take. Um, Certainly not innocent human life. Make that important distinction. So anyway, we're really living in a sort of axiomatic war at the moment, where you've got different statements about the human person, and I think as well that, like, I've been finding the language of left and right to be very outdated for some time now, and I've been reluctantly using it. I am inclined to think, and it's not an original thought, that the better way of viewing the current cultural moment is to view it in terms of sort of who's pro-human and who's in favor of what is good for humans, and who is anti-human and who's in favor of what's bad for humans. And I think you really capture most of what's important underneath those two umbrellas.
yeah, true. Because obviously you'll get the extreme right-wing economics, which I would consider to be quite anti-human. And
Yeah.
again, as we've said on the podcast previously, I believe in market economies. I'm not a socialist. I think that generally heavy state intervention in the economy is a bad thing that leads to worse outcomes and so on. But it's really when it becomes, um, I suppose, financial idolatry. I don't know where the most important thing is the bottom line of the GDP and so on. That's when you end up with disastrous anti-human consequences. And yeah, I mean, almost nobody self-identifies as anti-human. Like I don't want to start
No, of
demonizing my
course.
opponents and act like they're just like pure evil uh, maniacs, like some kind of
Yeah.
cartoon villain. But the 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 very common it's funny. It's so funny how what we believe wouldn't even have been considered an ideology at any other point in human history. Like, what are we saying? Human beings should have children just like every other organism on the planet. Bacteria reproduce, trees reproduce, crabs reproduce, jaguars reproduce. I think human beings, like the other creatures that inhabit this planet, should reproduce. That apparently makes me an ideology of some description. That's some kind of ultra traditionalist Catholic fundamentalist, conservative, whatever you want to put on it, for saying that people shouldn't go extinct and that just like chimps and turtles and narwhals, you should have kids. Like that's an ideology now. Apparently, I didn't know. I thought that was just normal. Um, Same goes for border enforcement. Like, is that saying I believe in strong borders? Is that an ideology, or is that just what every single being that is sentient does, and even beings that aren't sentient? Like, try be an ant and try wander into the ant colony of another ant and see what happens to you. Like, this stuff is so fundamental. It's actually sub ideological. Ideology is when you start getting into like tax rates and marginal issues about the administration of a state, like international commerce. That's an ideological thing that we can have arguments about all day long until the cows come home. Saying we shouldn't tolerate murder and we should have children and we should, you know, respect the basic institutions of the state. That's sub ideology, and
Well,
it's the fact that we have to argue about these things is shocking.
we were talking about this earlier about how, you and I, as long-time listeners, will be well aware, and many of them will be sick of it. We're, openly and proudly Catholic. But you can also acknowledge that C.S. Lewis spoke about it in The Abolition of Man, which I absolutely want to devote a podcast segment to at some point in the near future. I'm just reading something else that I would like to finish before I got into that fully. But in The Abolition of Man, he referred to the universal law, or the Tao, that all cultures across humankind have more or less adhered to. Um, this It's sort of more basic even than Christianity, say, because it sort of is common to all cultures, even those that weren't Christian. And like, I have it over my bookshelf there. I wish I'd grabbed it beforehand, because he has a load of things in it that he lists as being part of the Tao, which are sort of moral precepts that every society ever has sort of stood by. Like the idea that, yeah, your family is good. Like, no society ever has said that you should kill your family. No, like, and there's a reason for that. It's because there is a particular, you and I would say, moral baseline to reality that we all have access to and that we're all sort of capable of perceiving.
Even,
Um,
sorry to interrupt, but just to reinforce your point, I'm pretty sure the Irish Constitution, if it doesn't say this, it is certainly implies this, and this is like part of the jurisprudence of the Constitution that marriage is the institution of marriage is not created by the Constitution. All the Constitution does is recognize it because marriage is antecedent to law. Marriage is such a fundamental building block of human society. I don't think we've ever encountered any human population that does not have the concept of marriage. You go to Easter Island, you go to Papua New Guinea, you go to Russia, you go to Mongolia, they'll have a kind of marriage. It might be that, maybe they'll have polygamy, maybe you can marry multiple people, maybe they'll have strange customs and practices attached to it. But the idea of marriage predates any state or institution that we know. It is like the most natural. So, from that perspective, that tells you something about it. The idea that anybody would say it's like an outdated thing that we can get rid of, like Chesterton's fence, like that you should really think long and hard before you even contemplate something like that.
No, 100%, and like this goes back to go back to what Simon Harris was saying. I mean, once you start taking a sledgehammer to things that have been around, because tradition is such a sort of dirty word to the modern mind. Now, tradition speaks of being old-fashioned, backwards, and stodgy, and that's because our modern minds are obsessed with the sense of sort of progress. And progress itself is a very interesting concept because no one ever asks, progressing towards what?
Cancer is very progressive. It progresses through your entire body until you're dead.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure if you ask them, they would say, some sort of nebulous thing like a more equal society, or a better world if they were feeling particularly grandiose or something like that. But in doing so, like, you take it's supremely prideful to assume that, and I know this for a fact because I believed these things myself for a long time. I I genuinely thought for a long time that because I was born in 2020 in 1996 rather, and I lived in the early 2000s, I was inherently just smarter than everyone who came before me because I had access to more knowledge. Not to say I had integrated all of that knowledge and I had integrated it properly and become wiser as a result of it. I just genuinely thought I was smarter because I have access to all of this knowledge, which is such such a stupidly vague thing to think. But I really did think that, and I think a lot of people think that. But most people won't be honest and say that that's what they think. But nevertheless, they do think that because that's the way we speak about the past now. Certainly in Ireland, we speak about how people were stupid and religious. They were under the thumb of the Catholic Church. They just did things because that's what everyone around them did, and they never really thought about their lives. As though people aren't exactly that these days, which is just doing what everyone around them is doing. And the reason you can say it uncondescendingly about the people of our own generation is because we actually do now think we're better than those who came before us. The people before didn't. They were doing what previous generations had done for thousands of years. They were getting married. They were having kids. They were, enforcing law and not trying to undermine it with sort of liberal woo-woo, to put it that way.
They knew that their uncle couldn't get pregnant.
Yeah,
which instantly makes them more intelligent than most people who are in university college campuses today.
Or even to put it more fundamentally, just more in touch with reality. It's like we've completely lost touch with reality where we think we can be, because we've lost touch with the Tao or the moral law, to use again C.S. Lewis's language. We think now man can be whatever we want man to be. But the thing is, man is a definite thing. You and I have, justification for saying that. We would say he was created in a particular way. Human nature is what it is, and if you start trying to tinker with that and pull it beyond its boundaries, you're quickly going to bring about disaster. And I think you and I would again both say that's what you're seeing happen now on a daily basis.
And
It's a
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it's also important to say that we agree with the people who want to transcend human nature. We think that you can transcend your nature as well by becoming a saint. You know, like the
yeah,
saints
yeah.
are the ones who overcome the shackles, and not in a gnostic way where you are becoming non-physical or non-human or something. That's not what we believe. But to be transfigured, you know, to be glorified, to take people who are flawed and make them fit for heaven, which obviously is only capable through grace. And you know, we're probably annoying a lot of people by getting this theological, but you really
Well,
can't
undoubtedly,
talk
but
about these topics. You can't talk about these topics without talking about, like, this is the truth. This is the reality that um, people, our ancestors, believed for thousands of years, and uh, if you want to fundamentally transform yourself and your society, you can do it, just not in the way they want to.
yeah, no, I mean, you could go on about this for like a whole episode if you wanted to. And I mean, maybe what we're talking about here provides for a good segue into the second topic about, So if you're not enjoying this episode, you might want to tune out now. But if you are, you can stick around because the next thing we had wanted to talk about, if you don't object to me moving on to it, Ben, was the Catholic baptisms collapse. So, like, this will come as a surprise to absolutely no one. The Iona Institute issued a sort of briefing note there. Was it earlier this week, last week, I think, based on data from almost every Catholic diocese across the island of Ireland, which found that over the past 10 years, the number of baptisms taking place annually has fallen by 30%. I will toot my own horn here and say that I was chatting to David Quinn recently, who's obviously the director of the Iona Institute, and he was telling me about this research just before it was published. And he asked me to guess what percentage I thought baptisms had fallen by, and I hit the nail on the head with a guess of 30% because I thought the twin prongs that are actually identified in the report of falling birth rates and growing secularization, I thought between those two things, yeah, you're probably looking at about at where we're at culturally, you're probably looking at about 30%. And sure enough, that's what they found in their analysis. So just to give a few details on that before we sort of nearly return to the discussion we were having in some sense. The research that the Iona Institute came out with found that the two big drivers of the decline were falling births and rising secularism. They found that falling births accounted for about 60% of the decline in their analysis, with the rest accounted for by secularization. Um, Now, this is over the past 10 years, as I say. So they found that in the same 10 years during which baptisms fell 30%, births on the island had fallen by almost 20%. It was 18.8%. So um, people can read about this obviously on Gript.ie if they want to, but I think the big takeaway from this is that, I mean, it was as I will have indicated by tooting my own horn, this didn't come as a great surprise to me. I think if you're paying attention to these things, you could have guessed that was the trajectory. But I think that what people need to understand is that there is a very concrete, or rather, there's a change taking place with very concrete consequences in Ireland at the moment. A culture shift is happening. And I feel like for a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the political status quo, there's a lot more recognition or acknowledgement, right recognition and acknowledgement of the transformation being impressed upon Ireland by immigration, which absolutely having an effect, and we can talk about that. But I do feel as though it's still under discussed, and I think it's because it's the more uncomfortable of the two, nearly, that a lot of the Irish population turned away from Irish things, turned away from you. I would say obviously turned away from the church, which contrary to, like, there absolutely were failings in the church. There were people implicated in abuse scandals. There were um, uh, failings with mother and baby homes, but neither of those things, nor pretty much any other scandal that is just constantly thrown at the church, is anywhere near the scale that people think it is. And I do think that that's the result of an absolute propaganda hatchet job. And I feel very comfortable saying that. To the point that like people genuinely think now that nuns were like throwing babies out of windows and just sort of bloodthirstily murdering them. They think that every priest was a paedophile, even though it was an absolute fraction of a minority. Which, when you're talking about a global church, is still a lot of people, and it's still far too many people, far too many priests than it should have been, which is none. But nevertheless, it's not. None of these things are on the scale people think they were on. But as I say, nevertheless, the net effect of all of that is people have moved away from these things that made Ireland, and I would say made Ireland an absolutely beautiful and great place. And what do people think is going to happen? What do we think we're moving into? Again, like what are we progressing towards? And I don't think, certainly, I know for a fact, to refer back to him, people like Simon Harris have no bloody idea. Micheál Martin doesn't have any idea. Go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, I believe baptism is a sacrament, so obviously you want to see as many people receive that sacrament as possible, particularly babies. The graces they get from that and all are essential, and the
Mm.
entryway to the Christian life. Actually, you probably know this. Fun fact that the reason there's a holy water font at the front of every church as you come in is to symbolize the fact that baptism is the entryway to the entire Christian life. Like when you go through the church, physically, it's supposed to kind of represent your journey through the Christian life. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, the the only kind of like silver lining from this stat, if you wanted to try and find some kind of positive from it, is it entails less lying, which is always a good thing
Mm.
because I I sort of do resent the insistence by so many people who quite evidently do not believe any aspect of a particular belief system, not just this one, any belief system, uh, that they, you're lying to yourself and you're lying to everybody else, and it muddles the statistics. It doesn't give us a clear picture of where society is at, and it just annoys me. Like one example, um, there's this guy. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to diss him like that. But basically, he's this um, like ostensibly he's a Muslim imam and he's an influencer online, but he's very critical of Islam, and he's always going on about how Islamic societies are terrible and Christians do things better, and jihad is a huge problem, and blah blah blah, and like criticizing Muslim culture, criticizing Muslim beliefs and practices. And I've heard people on the right praising this guy and saying this is great, this is unreal, isn't it cool to see an imam saying these things? And I'm saying no, it's not great at all. This guy sucks because he clearly isn't Muslim. Like he clearly doesn't believe. He is the Muslim equivalent of Father James Martin. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
is totally fake and annoying to me, and I have no respect for him whatsoever. So, like, if you don't believe it, just say you don't believe it, and then we're grand. And I'm just sick of people saying identifying as a thing and not
Yeah,
believing
I
in it
know.
sincerely and not having any kind of authenticity. So if you know you haven't set foot in a church in your adult life, you don't intend to set foot in a church in your adult life, you don't even like the Catholic Church, why are you
No, I
getting your
think even
kids
even
baptized?
more common in Ireland these days. It's like, you know you still refer to yourself as Catholic, but like you don't go to mass on Sundays, which is like the absolute basic, or you think the church happens to be wrong about most social things. It's like, I think it'd be much better for you if you reconcile with those things. But if you're not going to do so right now, it's like, well, why do you still cleave to the church? Like,
I'll
it's
tell you
more
why.
honest.
I'll tell you why. Because human beings need culture and they need cultural practices in order to have a sense of self. Rituals are very important. And of course, religion, like Catholicism, has many rituals attached to it, like communion, like confirmation, like baptism, like marriage. These things give people a sense of structure in their life. So they want the structure, but they don't want to be constrained by any of the actual teachings or beliefs or dogmas.
Yeah.
So, because the alternative, if they were to jettison all of it and say it's all a load of nonsense and I don't believe in any of it, then what they would have to do is, like, what would be the coming of age ceremony in modern Ireland absent Christianity? You would dress up as the opposite gender and then use a deposit return scheme machine or something. Like, they'd have to come up with their own nonsense and like pull something out of their ass, and it would be totally
That would
unfulfilling
actually
and
be a
unsatisfying
very
because it
good one.
means
Yeah, you
nothing. So
send your like 13-year-old to go use a deposit return scheme for the first time.
yeah, that's the how you introduce them to adulthood, and everybody, all the kids. When they're 3, you let them pick their gender. That's the that's the new
Yeah, you put like a
equivalent of baptism.
Barbie and a dumper truck or something on the ground in front of them, whichever one they crawl towards. That's their core set.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, people they want the structure. They want, and like, the reason I think a lot of people will put down Catholic, even though they don't really believe in it, they don't pray, they don't actually take any of it to heart, is because they're not bothered to even stop and consider, well, what do I believe? Because if I
Yeah.
say I'm not Catholic, then I have to try and think, like, well, what am I then? And they're not even bothered to do that, so they just kind of, in a lazy manner, will
No,
be like, yeah, I'm whatever the dumb thing is. I'll just be that, you know.
I think you're exactly right about that. I think that one of the biggest problems the Western world, and again certainly Ireland, has at the moment is a sort of intellectual laziness. Like, it's literally that people don't want to examine their own beliefs. People don't want to examine, and now to be fair, it's because on a day life is busy. It's easy not to even be aware that that's something that you ought to do on a day-to-day basis, especially if you have, a job and you have kids and you've got a spouse to spend time with. But all the same, I don't think that's any excuse, because people, that's I can't remember which philosopher it was that said it, that the unexamined life isn't worth living. And I do think that there's some truth to it, in the sense that, like, if you don't ever stop to think about the foundation of your beliefs or what it is that you believe exactly, you're essentially like driftwood being carried along by a stream. Like, and the stream happens to be the culture you inhabit and what it is that everyone around you is doing at any given moment. And that's sort of the sum total of your experience on this earth. Whereas you're actually a lot more than driftwood. You're a human who is capable of looking around them and possibly coming to the conclusion that modern society is batshit crazy in a lot of ways, and you don't want to have a part of that. Not to say absolutely everything is, bad and irredeemable, but there are a lot of things society does at the moment. And as I say, Simon Harris was correct to acknowledge, for example, that there's a diminishing respect for authority, and that's sort of the respect for human life is going out the window. And it is entirely possible to acknowledge these things and think, well, like, why is that happening? And like, have I contributed to that in any way with like my attitudes or my beliefs or behaviors? And like, it's just that I feel like the sort of self-reflective or the self-critical capacity is the most unused muscle in modern man. Like, and obviously built into Catholicism, but it's also a part of, most spiritual traditions, is examining your conscience, is examining, like, your own thoughts and beliefs and actions, which is just something that modern man generally doesn't do. And like, there's so many reasons for that. It's because, like, you've been propagandized into thinking that you ought to, life is for living, life is for having fun, do whatever you want to do. Anyone who tries to tell you, like, to feel guilty about anything is just trying to control you, or like, ruin your vibe or something. And it's like, again, you're getting into kind of axiomatic territory here. It's like, well, what is life for? It's like, is the beginning and end of life like a good time? Because life is a pretty poor thing if so, because the vast majority of people at any given time, probably aren't having the best possible time they could have, and have no possible means of having the best possible time they could have, or is life perhaps a lot deeper and more meaningful than that? Um,
It's funny. A priest friend of mine, I have to credit with this because he gave me a great. He made a great point, which was very well made, where he pointed out that Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking, who was obviously an atheist, said he once described humans as chemical scum. I'll
mhm.
read the quote. He said, "The human race is just a chemical scum on a moderate sized planet orbiting around a very average star in the outer suburb of one among 100 billion galaxies. We are so insignificant that I can't believe the whole universe exists for our benefit." And he was, laying out his view of why, the idea that we're special or that the human race was created with any kind of intelligence or meaning behind it is preposterous. That was his position.
And nevertheless, he felt important or influential enough to publish a book and try to promulgate his view and convince a load of people of the righteousness of his view, or not
Yeah,
even the righteousness, but the correctness of his view, so that more people would live like him.
that's a great point as well. But what my priest friend, in addition to that, pointed out was, if that is your position, and other people might not put it as crudely or bluntly as that. I mean, what he said is completely accurate to the actual naturalistic atheistic worldview. Like, that is what they believe. They might not use those words and say chemical scum, but you essentially believe that we are an accidental byproduct of nature. And so what this friend of mine said is, if we believe at a societal level that human beings are just chemical scum, why should we be remotely surprised when people start treating each other like chemical scum? Like, you can't tell me with one breath that human beings are here by a totally random, mindless process for no reason in particular. When you die, there's nothing that happens afterwards. You're just going to become worm food and rot in the ground and get eaten by maggots and, enter the void, and that'll be the end of you. You say all that, but then also we have great dignity and our life is very important and it's really bad to hurt people and people's feelings matter. You can't believe both of those things. You can
A
pick one.
noble
Like,
lie.
yeah. So it's self defeating and ludicrous. Like, they actually have no objective criterion. They just want to adopt. They want to steal the moral value and weight of the Christian worldview or the religious worldview without any of the attached structures. But that doesn't work. Like, you actually can't do that, and it's internally incoherent. I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, we could keep going on this for an eternity, but I think there are another couple of topics we want to get to. And I forgot to mention this at the outset, but if people have any questions that they would
Oh
like to ask
yes.
to be read out on the podcast, please go to gript.ie/questions, and we'd be more than happy to take questions for any Gript subscribers. But sorry, go. What was our next topic that we wanted to pivot to? Unless you had something else to add on the last one.
No, I think we'll put, if there are any poor viewers who haven't been enjoying our tirade today, but who are still tuned in, we'll put them out of their misery. Because I thought, yeah, this one was a bit of a this recommendation recommendation sort of came out of left field. Because I know we've talked about video games before, but like it must have been like months ago at this stage, if not up to a year ago. Um, so not when we discuss too often, but both you and I remain like I was saying to you before we went on air, my PlayStation 4, which I got for my 18th birthday, died its definitive death like I don't know, a year ago, months ago. I hadn't been playing that much anyway, but I turned it on and it just died. So my gaming days are well and truly done. But I still like keeping up with gaming news because I sank like way too much time into them when I was a teenager, when I was in college. Um, and because of that, I remain convinced of the outsized. No, that's the wrong way to put it. I remain convinced of how huge video games are essentially, and also how little coverage they receive Like it's completely out of whack. It's like it's the biggest form of media by a country mile. Like the video games industry dwarfs Hollywood. It dwarfs the music industry. It dwarfs both of them together, like money in terms of the total value of the industries. And nevertheless, you see way more reporting and discussion about like this or that movie, or this or that like particular artist or whatever. And in the meantime, you've got way more people engaging with video games, way more money pouring into that industry. It's just objectively more influential and has more, input on people's day to day lives. And so I find it super curious that it's not more discussed. And one of the biggest stories of the moment, anyway, that's certainly worth discussing is related to what promises to be the biggest video game of all time, Grand Theft Auto 6. And I, can feel comfortable saying that because Grand Theft Auto 5 broke multiple records when it came out. When was it? Like 2013, I think it came out 13 years ago or so.
Yeah, about that, and it was. I think we were saying off camera. I believe it was the big and is still the biggest piece of media ever produced. Like more than any film, any song, any TV show,
Mm-hmm.
more than anything. And I know I certainly played my fair share of it. I'm sure you did. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't play video games anymore. And my wife constantly, like she'll say, "Listen, you work really hard. You're stressed out. You should play games. Like you should sit down, play some GTA, relax." Like she'll be telling me to take a load off. And I deliberately, as tempting as that is, I deliberately resist that urge because I feel like she's saying it and I'm sure she believes that, but I think there's an intrinsic aura loss where she would get the ick. Like even she insists, she's like, no, you're entitled to a break just like anybody else. You can have your little hobby that you like and that's fine. But if she actually walked in and I was playing video games,
As she
I
as
feel
she
like
brought you your
her respect would just drop. Like you have to maintain the. There's always something better that you could be doing. You know what I mean?
that is the curse of being the family man. It's like, well, I have no option for playing video games now, even if I wanted to, as I say, because the PS4 broke and I don't plan on getting anything else anytime soon. But yeah, I'm the same. Like, even if the option was there, you always feel it's like there's so much to be done around the house. It's like, or okay, even if you are just going to take some time to relax or not like do anything practical, it's like you could be reading in that time. You could like go for a run or exercise. It's like there are so many aura full ways to spend that time that don't involve your wife bringing you in chicken tenders while you're sitting on the floor in your boxers and vests. Like,
Yeah, like if your wife walks in and you're working out and listening to a podcast about the Roman Empire, that's fine. Like you haven't lost anything as far as the optics points go. But if you're like swearing and using slurs on a 12-year-old over Xbox Live, you've lost it instantly. Like you can't win.
I do always find those like they're real like Gen Z memes or TikToks that I don't have TikTok, but I come across them on X of like oh like my dream relationship, and it's some guy sitting there on his gaming PC while his girlfriend is bringing him food. And like I cringe when I see it. I'm like, is this really your dream relationship? Like where because I like video games. I appreciate that like they are one of humanity's most impressive technical accomplishments. I really feel that, and I feel like there's a proper place for enjoying them. But I think that they are inherently addictive. Like they're designed to be that way, and because
This
of
is
that,
this is exactly it. Sorry to interrupt, but like I recently considered, I thought something that my son is he's going to be 3 in a couple of months, and I thought he would really enjoy watching me play Minecraft or that game Spore from years ago
yeah,
where you
yeah,
have like a creature that evolves. I thought he would love that, and then he could have input, and I'd get to relax, and I'd be socializing with him, and I thought this could be good. So I briefly considered that, and I realized no, I can't do that, and it's not because he wouldn't enjoy it or it would be bad. he would enjoy it too much. Like you can't moderate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like giving. It's like crack. Like the reason crack is bad is not because it feels bad to take. It's the opposite. It's too good. Like that's the problem, as I would know from firsthand experience. I'm joking. That's a joke. But like these things are almost impossible to moderate. Like if you
Yeah.
could restrict yourself to 1 hour a week of whatever, you'd probably be fine. But almost nobody can do that because it's too fun. It's
Yeah.
literally too good.
Like in theory, that would be the ideal way to do it, but I throw my hands up and acknowledge, and that's why I'm not bothering to get anything since my PS4 broke, because I just think, like, what's the point? It's like if I got something new, I when I did sit down to play it, I definitely wouldn't limit it to an hour, and then when I wasn't, just being realistic, when I wasn't playing it, I would just want to be playing it. Like it's funny, I haven't been big into playing video games for years now, but I still feel that it hasn't
I
changed at all.
literally on a daily basis, almost like a habit. I don't play video games. Every day I look at the GTA mods website and I'll just look at what mods have come out for a game that isn't even installed on my computer. Like I don't even utilize them at all. But I just want to see what people are working on because I'll be going through scenarios in my mind of stuff I would do if I was playing Grand Theft Auto. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like
Oh,
it's rough.
but it's just incredible. Like I do feel like the ideal is to limit yourself to, like, yeah, an hour on a Friday evening or some weekend evening, or 2 hours. If you want to, like, really push the boat out, it's like, okay, like an hour every evening at the weekend or 2 hours every evening at the weekend. But like you'd be a better man than I anyway if you were able to limit it like that. I certainly couldn't, which is why teetotaling is kind of, unfortunately, the better option. But all of which is just to say that video games are addictive like nothing else. The video game industry is of a scale that doesn't even really, it isn't worth comparing to movies and music and things. And the biggest of them all is Grand Theft Auto, the Grand Theft Auto series, which the sixth iteration of which is coming out this November. And the reason we wanted to discuss it today, because I'm sure a lot of people won't have been following this story unless they're young men, in which case they'll have been far more over it than we are, Ben. GTA 6, which, as I say, promises to be
They've already got the moist critical rundown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, everyone's been all over it. Like, but so the biggest video game of all time is, say, due out this November, has been leaked ahead of its first sort of proper extended look, so to speak. So Rockstar, the producer behind the game, was due to do an extended look. I think it's tomorrow. This will be going out on Wednesday, the 26th. And I think it's tomorrow that they're doing an extended look on Netflix, which, you can probably have a comment or two on that sort of model for showing a new game. But anyway, that's what they were planning on doing. And in the sort of 2 weeks ahead of that, some either person or group, they still don't know, which is just incredible to me, appears to there's a lot of unknowns with all of this, so this is all up for correction. But this person or group going by the name Cyberleak, and that's leak spelled Leek, appears to have gotten hold of an old version of the full game. How they got a hold of it, no one knows. Who they are, no one knows. And they've been releasing clips from, as I say, they appear to be sort of early versions of the game and its development. So like it's very advanced, like, already, but it's certainly not what the finished product is. Like, it's a lot less polished than the finished product will be. Rockstar being famous for issuing very polished products, and this is not that. But nevertheless, like, the bones of the experience are there. So it's been releasing, like, clips.
They haven't yet added like the characters yeah, like their pubic hair growing visibly over time if you did a time lapse, or like weird like the
But
level of
people
detail. What
might
was it
people
on
might
Red Dead Redemption where like the horse's
you
balls shrink in the cold or
if it's
something, like
cold.
that level of granular.
Well, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. Like, people might have thought your comment out of place, but like Rockstar fans, because they've come to expect such high standards, are extremely weird, and they do genuinely expect that kind of detail in their games. So, like, yeah, if you can't see like the millimetric growth of facial hair or body hair on a character, it's like, oh, the game's a failure. Like, don't want to play it anymore. So anyway, these leaks have been going out now for, I think it's about a week and a half or 2 weeks, and they've just been showing different aspects of the game. Like, they had just a couple of examples. They had one of the characters cycling along a beach, and what a lot of people took from it was that the game, the engine, the design, everything about it is clearly insane, because the crowd density on the beach is a lot more approaching what you get in real life to what you've traditionally had in video games. It's a world apart from the previous iteration in the GTA series. You've had ones where, like,
I've heard there's even things like flesh deformation, by which I mean, like, let's say there's an overweight character. If they like fall over, you'll see their like torso kind of squish, like in the same way that your
mm-hmm.
skin has like an elasticity to it. That
Yeah,
if a character got punched and you slowed it down, you would see their cheek kind of
yeah.
pushing, that kind of thing. There's actually fleshy volume to the characters, like that sort of technology.
No, like, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, but like, Rockstar does with its games, as will not be surprised to any of our gaming, you know, aware listeners. It does with its games things that like other studios just can't match, because like the size of the studio, it's a global studio. They have offices in multiple places in the US, in the UK, all over the place. But they also have just an unmatched budget. There are literally tens of thousands of people involved in bringing this into being. Like, it is a real sort of modern wizardry of sorts. I feel quite strongly about that. But nevertheless, this has been going on for 2 weeks or so, and naturally, Rockstar and its parent company, Take Two Interactive, have been going hammer and tongs trying to find out how this happened and who's responsible for it. They've been issuing takedowns for these videos on social media, getting them taken down. They apparently, it was reported on by an American publication, commenced legal proceedings in one of the U.S. courts to try and get information from uh, popular like gaming discussion platforms like Discord, and there was another one, I can't remember which, to try and gain information about accounts that were promulgating these videos, which obviously, there's intense questions of privacy about. But nevertheless, their efforts have
Because
been
I mean,
completely
there are billions of dollars on the line here. Like, this is a
I
huge,
think
like,
the,
again, the
I think
launch
theoretically
is one of the
yes,
most
but I think
anticipated.
theoretically yes, but I also think that that won't be the case. I do agree. There was a former Rockstar employee interviewed by the BBC there recently, and he was saying that he thinks the sort of effects of this are ultimately overblown. He was saying that people are going to go out and get the game no matter what happens, and I think he's exactly right. I think you can't slow this train, to put it that way. This is going to be the biggest game of all time, no matter what this person leaks, because like the audience is just massive, and the anticipation has been years long for it, like literally years long. But
As
what
I
it
said on Twitter recently, we got new discovered sermons from Saint Augustine before Grand Theft Auto 6 came out.
yeah,
So,
literally
uh, yeah.
literally that. People have been waiting a long time, but so I don't think anything can do that. I think what it can do is like they're taught the late. It hasn't happened anyway as of the time of recording this, but the group or person CyberLeak was talking next about releasing some footage related to the story, and it would be the first time they've done this, and that's where it could start getting into genuinely damaging territory in terms of, like, spoiling different aspects of the story for people. And again, I don't think it would ultimately have any input on the game's performance, but I think that would be where it gets kind of very not ideal for Rockstars. I mean, it's already a mess from their perspective, but it'd be very, very undesirable anyway at that stage. Rockstar, just before we went to record with this, they released their first statement acknowledging the situation, in which they said it's been heartbreaking for their team and obviously not how they intended for people to see the game after all this time, especially in light of the fact that there's going to be an extended look tomorrow. And they apologized for the game taking so long and said that they hope that nevertheless people are, entirely satisfied by the final product when it comes out in November. Now, why is this happening? Cyber Leak, which I feel a bit ridiculous saying every time I do, but anyway, says that it's in protest of Rockstar's decision not to make a physical copy of the game. So Rockstar announced, when it was announcing sort of pre-orders for GTA 6, it said that there wasn't going to be a physical edition of the game. So you can still get the box, you can still go out and get the box, but all that's inside it is a code that allows you to download the game. Like, you can download a game and that's it, it's on your console. And if you delete it, I imagine you can re-download it again because you've used that code once, but you won't be able to get it on a disc, which is the way games have been done. Uh, my whole life. Before that, it was cartridges and things, but game discs were the common way of doing it until sort of digital download became a lot more common prior to the pandemic, but certainly since then, that's been the main way it's done, and that was very unpopular. And it was followed a couple of days later by PlayStation, which is obviously one of the biggest gaming platforms, saying that, I think it's from January 1st, it's either 2027 or 2028, I think 2028, saying they're doing away with physical games altogether and they're only going to be doing digital from then on. This has been extreme. Yeah.
This is one of those things that's very controversial, and I understand why. Like, I feel a visceral opposition to that as well, instinctively. But it's like one of those notional things. Like, I don't like the push towards cashless society, and I
Yeah.
think, oh, that's messed up. We should always have access to cash. It also just so happens that I never have 1 red cent of cash on me, almost ever. Like, I only ever use my card, and whenever homeless people come up to me and say, "Oh, would you have some spare change?" But I always say I don't have anything, and they never believe me. And literally, I've not got anything on me. But
Yeah.
so this feels like one of those situations where I don't like it, but also it does seem way more convenient to do the digital route, and I don't think I would actually miss. I think it's more notional than practically a problem. But anyway, go on.
No, yeah, I was going to share my controversial opinion as well. I think the cashless thing is different to this because I think cash is more fundamental than physical games. I'm the same as you. Like, I absolutely believe cash should always be an option and should always be facilitated and, even encouraged nearly. But I think that's a lot more fundamental than like physical copies of games. But yeah, my unpopular opinion is that I kind of come down in a similar place to you, which is that they would not be doing this if it didn't make more sense on their end of the thing. Like, I'm the same as you. I feel a sort of inherent revulsion to the idea that like that option is no longer there. Because I remember when I was a kid and you'd buy a new game, part of the experience was like, I don't know about you, but I enjoyed going to the shop to get it. And I enjoyed when you got it. They used to come with these like fairly hefty little booklets inside them, and that was a whole experience in and of itself. Whereas now,
One of my craziest childhood memories, not craziest, like this is not action packed or anything, but like one of my most intense childhood memories was I was visiting my grandmother overseas, and so I didn't have access to my Xbox, like the original Xbox from the early 2000s. So I wasn't able to play anything, and uh, at a local uh, Extravision or something, like near my grandmother's house, my dad had bought me Destroy All Humans 2, the game, and I wasn't able to play it because I didn't have my console with me, and we were there for a week. So the whole time, I just read the manual over and over because that was like the only way I could experience the game on any level, and I was like raging because I don't know how old I was at this point, but yeah.
yeah,
So as you say, like that was an integral part of the fun of it.
yeah, and like I had similar experiences where, like, yeah, when we were living down in Waterford and we'd go up to Dublin to visit all my family. And naturally, my consoles would have been left down in Waterford, but like I'd go to a game shop and maybe get a game there. And then, and this is the downside of it, you'd kind of be wishing away the trip then until you could get back and play this thing, which is where they're just like crack cocaine to kids. But yeah, nevertheless, I do like remember fondly like having the thing and reading the booklets, yeah, and like poring over the box as much as you can. And it was just a lot more tangible an experience, and tangible is always good than going onto the PlayStation Store or whatever the Xbox alternative is, or Steam as the PC players use, and just clicking download and leaving it there. Like it's convenient, but it's a lot more convenient, but it's a lot less uh, fulfilling, tangible. Yeah, I'm not sure what the word is, but it's certainly less in a sense. Anyway, that's the way things are going. They are, and you could make the argument, it's like, well, would a company not for a change decide just to do the right thing and preserve it, even if it takes a bit of a financial hit? And like, fair enough, you can make that argument, but a company's never going to do that. And so, like, this will save them production costs, like video game studios, publishers, whoever's responsible for it, save them production costs on discs, boxes, distribution, all of those different things. Obviously, critics say that, well, this means that you never really own a game because these digital downloads, you can have your license revoked for them and things like that. So it's more of that concern, and it's a valid concern. But nevertheless, this cyber leak is apparently in protest of that, attacking Rockstar in this way, because Rockstar has sort of fully come on board with it, with this lack of a physical edition for GTA. And there's
I've heard that that's possibly a pretext, given the fact that they have also been heavily promoting
that's what I
cryptocurrency
was gonna
in
say.
all of the leagues. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think their sort of noble Robin Hood shtick is nothing more than a shtick, because on all of the leaks that they're issuing, they have this like sort of superimposed transparent text that is encouraging people to invest in their Bitcoin. And they're saying like, oh, if you guys hit this milestone with our Bitcoin, we're going to release this, we're going to release this particular scene or whatever from the game, or this particular feature. And lots of people are pouring money into it. And the group or the person is claiming, oh, I need this for like the costs associated with the leaks. I think that's bullshit, personally. I think you're dealing with a bit of a scam artist here. I mean, never leaving aside the fact that I would say that this is good old fashioned form of like theft or corporate espionage, like, which I would say is immoral, regardless of what you think the company is doing. I don't think you should be doing this, and I think it's wrong. But it is a huge mess for what is the biggest video game of all time. And as I say, I don't think ultimately it's going to have any sort of major financial impact on the game. But I think in terms of the whole experience of it being rolled out, and even in terms of people's first exposure to it, which I remember so well from my gaming days, uh, it's far from ideal. And I imagine I actually do have some sympathy for the Rockstar team who are watching it unravel before their eyes, and for whatever reason they've been able to figure it out. Yeah, I imagine that's probably immensely frustrating.
yeah, I mean, what's crazy is it's such a massive cultural uh, event and moment that literally, if it was a foreign state actor, like a Russian proxy or something, just trying to. Basically, my point is, it sounds silly, but disrupting this video game could literally meaningfully dent American morale. You know what I mean? Like, it's that important to enough young men. I think there was actually a U.S. military uh, recruitment drive for some unit where they said, if you join, we'll give you 2 weeks additional leave when GTA drops so that you can play
Yeah.
it. Like that was literally a selling point for young men. So you could actually literally hurt a society by disrupting a video game coming out. That's
Uh,
how major it is.
no, you can't
Hit them
over.
with their pain point. What really matters to them, like.
It's so American. It's like, yeah, you wanna, if that were the case, you want to really hurt them, go for GTA 6. But like, I get it. It's these games. There is no attention sink in the world like a good video game. Like, once you turn it on and you start playing, you're like gone from your life. You're fully immersed in what's happening on the screen. Like your attention, your whole consciousness is directed upon the story, upon the protagonist, what's happening in the game. And Rockstar are just unrivaled in terms of creating an immersive world. And like what's been seen of GTA 6 so far, like it's just going to be unlike anything else. It's like it's obviously set in the fictional Vice City, which is very much based on Miami and the sort of surrounding environs. And it just looks like unbelievable that humans have reached a place that they're able to create a simulation of an American city like that and ship it out for everyone else to enjoy on their own. I mean, I don't infrequently think that it's certainly not the best use technology I've ever had. I'd always say that's probably like medical technology that actually saves lives and helps very sick people. But I do think that there's a sense in which the technology most emblematic of the sort of ridiculous technological decadence we've reached as a society are video games. And the pinnacle of that pinnacle is a Rockstar game where like they've gone into the detail of like a horse's testicles reacting to the external temperature, like, but because of that degree of attention to detail, it's as close as you're going to get to inhabiting a real world. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
Well,
when
I just can't wait to get so locked in that I start to associate with the character on the screen, and my wife can't even get through to me anymore. She's saying, Ben, can you like, and not just with this video game, with any video game, like developing some kind of psychosis where I think I'm Kratos or something like that, and I'm neglecting all of my responsibilities and walking around with an axe and stuff. That's gonna be great.
yeah, well, you see your enthusiasm for video games start bleeding over into your professional life when you get Micheál Martin in front of you and I was like, I wanted to ask what you think of Grand Theft Auto 6. Uh,
Yeah. Tonista, have you played Grand Theft Auto 6 yet? Or what did you think? Um,
what's your PlayStation name?
yeah.
Um, but
Honestly, I don't want to be giving them ideas, but that would kind of be funny if they did a like a playthrough or not. It wouldn't have to be a big long thing, just like a first look. I feel like that would be a publicity stunt waiting to happen, but I don't want to give them ideas in that
well, I
regard.
think there'd be a lot of people happy to give them like perpetual leave to go away and play it at this stage. But no, that's one to watch anyway. And when all of the men disappear from your life come November 19th, that's why. So I think that's it for this week, Ben.
Very, very briefly, I did want to touch on. I'm really just going to say this in one sentence. I don't think it needs much discussion, and we did go long this week. But the government obviously have decided to increase the requirements for naturalized
Oh yeah.
citizenship, and I don't want to. You see, I'm not an activist, like I am a journalist. So saying I take credit for it, quote unquote, is kind of the wrong way to frame it. Uh, but basically, the point is, I don't think they would have been doing this had we not made the case as forcefully as we did. Not just on this podcast, but in various articles and videos and things that we did around this subject. Because earlier in the year, I had asked Jim O'Callaghan, is this something that you would consider introducing, for example, language proficiency requirements? We're the only country in the entire EU where you don't have to prove you
Yeah.
can speak a local language in order to get citizenship, or also proving that you can support yourself financially. Right now, you just have to prove that you're not a serious criminal, which is kind of like the bare minimum that I would expect to even let you live here, let alone be a citizen.
Yeah.
Um, so I asked him about it at the time, and he kind of shot it down. He said, "Look, we considered that, but then we weren't keen on it because there'd be like administrative burden and blah blah blah." And we discussed this on a previous episode. So he was not enthusiastic at all by the sounds of it, and then we started hounding them about it and bringing up like, is this not kind of crazy? And then Simon Harris, to his credit, said, yeah, look, I mean, intuitively that sounds right, and we'll look into it. And now, lo and behold, it's like a month later, and it looks like they're actually doing something about it. So apparently, Colin Brophy is in the process of drafting this, and he's going to bring a proposal to cabinet by the end of the year, and they're going to talk about it more then. So that's some that seems promising and very interesting that they didn't just. It looks like he wasn't just fobbing me off when he said he'd look into it. It looks like they actually are looking into it, so that's noteworthy. And
The
I always
man, the
do.
myth, the legends. Colin Brophy standing guard at Ireland's borders and safeguarding Irish
Absolutely.
standards.
God bless our troop. You know, holding down the fort. But with that said, on a related note, and we won't spend too long on this, our reader, viewer, should I say, Gary wrote in and he said, no, not to. This is not Gary Kavanagh, by the way, of Gript fame, our colleague. I think he would just DM us. Frankly, I don't think he would use the questions portal. But another Gary says, "What do you imagine is the goal of those facilitating the mass migration into Europe and the Middle Eastern and African nations from those countries, should I say, considering the drawbacks, welfare dependency,
I
terror attacks,
think
rape gangs,
maybe
incompatible
I think I have a
values,
sense of
they
deja
didn't
vu.
see any benefits to Europe and the West?"
Did we not answer that one last week? I have a sense of deja vu that we did.
No, I brought that up to you in the group chat, and I said we would ask it, and then we ended up not on. I went for a different one in the end, so we haven't actually addressed this one on the
Oh,
show. I think.
you go first.
Yeah, I'll just say that they are. I believe that politicians have painted themselves into a corner where it's easier, as with many things, it's easier to keep being wrong than to admit that you were wrong and to try and correct it. That's true in interpersonal relationships. That's true in high level organizations, and it's true in politics as well. So they believed a hippy dippy utopian myth that if we allow mass immigration and multiculturalism, then we're going to end up with candy coated raindrops and sunshine, and everybody's going to give each other hugs and kisses, and it'll be like an episode of the Care Bears. And then they tried it, and it went horribly wrong. And if they were to admit it went horribly wrong, then they would have to accept that they're naive idiots, essentially. And that's not really a great pitch if you're running for re-election. So they'd rather keep being wrong than admit their own failure. I think it's that simple. That's my personal view.
Yeah, I mean, I would be of the opinion that it kind of ties back into something we were talking about earlier, which I think, but it's on well, no, it's a personal level as well. It's just a complete lack of reflectiveness. I know there's a lot of people who think that, you know, mass migration is an intentional plot by a group of people in control or something. I don't subscribe to that view personally. I think that, with my worldview as a Catholic, you don't need to sub in people for what in reality are spiritual powers trying to guide the world along particular courses. And I think that you've essentially just had governments in Ireland, in the UK, in various European countries, everywhere, that never really stopped to ask questions about, societal cohesion or what a nation is and things like that. So we obviously moved into a world with technology like flight, like mass flight, mass transport via the air, which enabled the movement of people on a scale that's like never been seen before. And then also, more boats than ever before that have been capable of transporting more people than ever before, people smugglers capable of moving people illicitly. And I think that politicians were just totally ill-equipped to answer the questions. So like there's obviously so many different kinds of migration. So like you've got legal immigration, and like a lot of the people who were coming legally were coming in to do work in many instances, and so governments are just kind of like, well, work is a good thing, they pay taxes and whatnot, so like that's fine, that's good, why would we stop that kind of thing? And it was never at a kind of level, even though particularly foresighted people could see it, that it was particularly noticeable or that it was having any particular societal impact yet. Whereas now it's reaching a place that obviously the questions are becoming a lot more pressing, and therefore they're having to answer those. So I don't think there was any real conscious movement behind it so much as it wasn't particularly pressing before now, and so politicians didn't have to reflect on their policies or what was happening to their country or what they were allowing to happen with different policies, like in Ireland's instance, courting multinationals and allowing them essentially free reign in terms of who they hire and whatnot. Whereas now the effects are becoming so clear and obvious, they're being forced to kind of reflect upon the realities that they're now having to deal with.
I mean, look at it this way. You go back and watch, as I have, the 2016 general election debate in Ireland between Enda Kenny and Micheál and Mary Lou at that point. Or you can go back to, or I don't even know if it was Mary Lou, it might have been Jerry Adams even still. I can't remember when the changeover happened. But regardless, the point is, you go back to 2016, 2011, 2007, immigration did not come up once in any of those debates. It
Yeah.
literally just wasn't an issue that was discussed in Irish politics. And this was at a time when it would have absolutely been a huge focal point in UK politics, in various European countries. In Germany, they would have talked about this. Like this was obviously America. It's been a huge issue for years that they would have talked about the border, and Democrat politicians get asked about it, and Republican politicians get asked about it. And it's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the case here. The first time that I'm aware of that immigration was discussed in any kind of a major serious way was 2019 with the Uachtarard and maybe even 2018, but the Uachtarard protests and various concerns there about like almost like proto IPAS protests before the really big surge post COVID. And then there was a little bit of a lull, and then COVID happened, and then after that it exploded. And almost instantaneously, as soon as it started to become a major electoral issue, the government started conceding ground on it at a rate of knots, and they're giving up all kinds of things, saying, "Yeah, you're right. We do need to tighten citizenship. We do need to forcibly deport people. We do need to restrict migration because it's having an impact on housing and homelessness and all this sort of thing." They're basically conceding the whole argument. And so that's all it took was just actually having the conversation, and it's already being rolled back. But it's very easy to persist with a bad policy when you're in an echo chamber, which we were at a national level. So with that said, appreciate everybody continuing to watch this podcast. If you'd like to ask a question of your own, you can go to gript.ie/questions. And thank you so much for watching. God bless.